since it seems that you've sort of transitioned into a more civil approach anyway with your moderating of these debates and whatnot, and I feel like it, is worth reaching out and seeing if it's worth just having kind of like a civil conversation about our disagreements and just,
Yeah.
I don't know, just talk it out,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I agree.
Not really
So
looking for anything really
there
confrontational.
there was there was a conversation that you had a while back. I think that really kind of affected you a bit, which was with Vosh. Is that right? This is.
I mean,
I want to make
Vosh,
sure I got kind of the narration right.
I mean, yeah, so Vosh, like, that was like just a significant debate because he challenged a lot of my conservative beliefs in a way that I hadn't been challenged before. It was also like I was also not good at debate either, but it wasn't just the debate. It was also just like his approach to politics and certain other things. Like I started to agree with him on certain issues too, with like in aspects of the far right, and I started to really become more aware of like the distinction there. Um, but yeah, like I definitely like appreciate the debate, and it definitely had some significance with me losing the debate, and that kind of made me have to rethink some of my positions and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, it wasn't just like I had one debate though, and then flipped everything around kind of thing.
No, right, right. I had noticed in that conversation there was some things that Vosh said that I wanted to bring up with you that
I
I
would
have a
have
lot of.
to. All right, I don't know. I haven't gone over that convo in a long time, so.
Well, it's just one thing really. One of the things that he had said, and I kind of hear this parroted a lot, is the right only respects strength. The right only respects strength. The strength. So what I've seen with your kind of debate progression, it's been really interesting to watch. By the way, great job on the improvement. I mean,
Thank
we're
you.
talking night and day, massive improvement, very impressive. I
Thank
get
you.
DMs about it constantly. By the way,
Oh,
very
cool.
impressive.
I appreciate that.
But to me, it's like you found this thing, this sword, in a way, is what debate is for online streamers. It's a thing that we can turn to protect ourselves. It's a thing that we can turn to get our messages across. It's the weapon that we have is debate. We don't really have anything else at our disposal besides that.
Mm-hmm.
And I see that you really have tried to refine your craft and making sure that you're really good with this weapon. And I enjoy seeing your debates. Like I honestly enjoy watching them as I'm moderating them, and I think other people are really starting to as well.
Well,
But
thank
one
you.
of
I
the things
really
I wanted
appreciate that.
yeah, no problem. One of the things I really noticed though in that conversation was that whole the right just wants strength. They only respect strength, but I don't think that that's true. I was having a conversation before this one with a guy. We were talking about masculinity, and I think really what the right is after is they want to retain elements of a masculine society, and I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that.
I mean, what would you consider a masculine element of society?
Yeah, so if we were going to look at it through traits, for instance, some of the things you would consider masculinity would be things like stoicism, rough and tumble play. This is the kind of more masculine element in society, and what the right really seems to reject or be the most upset about is kind of the lack of masculinity as it's called toxic. It's called all this other type of
Well,
stuff.
that's kind of, I would actually like to talk to you about that because a lot of the times the toxic masculinity conversation is honestly misconstrued, and that's because there are truthfully a lot of dumb fucks, like dumb fuck liberal lefty types that
Mhm.
weaponize what was once actually an academic term to just mean anything they want it to mean. Anytime they don't like someone, it's just toxic masculinity. But the thing is that there's something you said. So there are certain like I guess masculine traits you mentioned, like, yeah, if guys want to like rough and tough play or whatever, I don't really see a problem with that. But when you say stoicism, I do have just a little bit of an issue with that. Is of course everyone should generally have like, be able to control themselves in public and not be like freaking the fuck out every like around or over everything. But it depends on how far you want to take that, because see, the toxic masculinity thing, what that actually is trying to get at is that there are some expectations of masculinity that end up being toxic to the man. So stoicism, for example, I would say oftentimes it's, if it's forced, if it's, you're a man, you need to shut the fuck up, suck it up and deal with it. Now, there are certainly instances, I agree, where you do need to actually just suck it up and deal with it. But there are
Right.
also other times where it's like, it's unhealthy to tell someone, you're a boy, you're a man, you can't cry, you can't express, like, men need to be able to express their emotions in a like healthy way and be able to like cry and be able to be emotional if that's like how they feel. Now, again, I'm not saying that you should be sobbing all over the place, but like,
Mm.
I
And
don't
neither
know.
should women, right? Neither should women,
Right, like just in
really.
order in a decent society, you probably wouldn't be like just see people like breaking down sobbing in their day-to-day job, of course, but like it's oftentimes this idea that like you're a man, so you need to be stoic constantly. You can't really show any sign of maybe weakness, because oftentimes, see, again, it would sort of come back to why is stoicism so important? Isn't it
Well,
ultimately
so
because it's a
I'll tell
symbol of
you, I'll
strength?
tell you my take on it. You can critique it. I don't think that you really will, though. You're a father.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I enjoy drawing as a contrast, for instance, if a Groyper attacks Hunter Avallone, I might say to a Groyper, for instance, well, he has wife and kids, and you pretend that that's your highest value. So if a Groyper pretends that that's his highest value, then why is he attacking you? He doesn't have a wife and children, right?
Right.
Doesn't make a lot of sense. Doesn't make a lot of sense. But your children do look to you for leadership. And so
Mm-hmm.
if you fall apart when your children need you, that would be an instance where stoicism would be pretty much critical, wouldn't it?
Well, sure, but again, that doesn't really apply necessarily to just a man. Like you wouldn't want the mom breaking down in front of her kids necessarily either. So I would kind of have to push back on it that being just a like masculine thing. Of course you have to control yourself in front of your children, and there are times where in order to protect them, you cannot show how worried you really are. I completely understand that, but again, I don't mean that there's like, and again, I'm not saying that in every instance you should just be breaking down sobbing, but just this idea that you are a man, so you cannot express these emotions ever. That's more the harmful thing.
I
So,
don't really think that that's the stoicism that they're talking about. They're not talking about stoicism in the sense that you can't break down in front of your friends or things like that. What they're talking about is the perception that people have of you as a man. They tend to want to see strength. And when they're talking about strength, they're talking about internal character more than anything.
mhm.
So when you're teaching your kids a lesson, you're not teaching them a lesson by using force. You don't need to, right? But you're using strength of will and strength of character. And that is really what guides them, right? You have these children that you have to guide. You're completely 100% responsible for them. You can't just let them appeal to your emotion or bargain you out of things that are terrifically bad for them, things like this. You have to, in some sense, show a large degree of stoicism. And even with a wife, you have to do that. You have to show a large degree of stoicism. If they're down and things are crumbling around them, one of the best things that you can do sometimes is just be a rock, even if you're scared to death yourself, right?
Well, I can agree with this, and again, it's kind of goes back to what I'm saying is, I think the where we're sort of, I think where we're kind of disaligning here is like, of course, there are instances where it is good to be stoic, but the two things that I feel like we're sort of looping back around in is that doesn't just apply to the man. That would apply technically to any parent. They shouldn't really be breaking down in front of their kids. But yeah, and also what I'm saying is just this general idea that you're a man, you cannot cry, you can't express your emotions, you need to suck it up, stop being a girl, stop being a woman. And believe me, that might sound exaggerated and a little hyperbolic, but that happens. Like there are,
Well, how come the critique never goes the other way?
what do you
Like, they're
mean?
not saying, like they don't say to women, for instance, stop trying to act like a man, act like a woman.
Well,
How come the
no. I'm
critique is
saying that
only the
critique
one
is
direction?
bad. Saying stop acting like a woman because they're crying or something. I'm saying that's harmful, and that ultimately leads to provable like psychological damage, especially if it's leading to like a repression of their feelings or their emotions. And it's just it really again. Like I would be the first one to say, and I think we agree here for sure that there are absolutely like important qualities that you should teach people and teach your son also. Yes, that you should work to be the provider for your family. That, but again, I would circle back to, but just if you're not the provider of the family, that doesn't necessarily make you less of a man. It might just mean that maybe in this instance, you're better suited for this position and your wife is better for this position. Like, it doesn't always have to be like the man is this way, the woman's this way, and the
Right.
toxic. Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to ramble. Sorry, but
No, you're not rambling. I was just listening. One of the things that I'd like to kind of push back on a little bit when we're you understand the conservative mindset. You were one for a long time before you kind of moved over towards the center. The mindset, generally speaking, is that the conservative believes that the hierarchical structure exists within nature. And so, one of the things that we often look at is we say, look, when you're looking at a dynamic family, we do know from studies that the nuclear family, what you would consider the nuclear family, or the cross generational family, you have the grandparents who live with you, maybe the two parents, right? This type of thing. Children do best in that environment, right? They're hands down. Now, that's not to say they can't do better in other environments. They can and have and been highly successful.
how do you
But that's
define the nuclear family? That would be what I would my first question there, because
well, I
I
wouldn't.
generally
I don't.
agree with
I
you.
don't think of it as the nuclear family. I consider it a cross generational family. So the way that I think of it is like the nuclear family. Traditionally, the way people think of it is they go the wife and the husband and the children. I think of it as cross generational. You maybe have grandparents who are there, or grandkids who live with you, or this type of thing. That's always been fairly common throughout history as well. When I look at it, though, you can see the outcomes of people who live in a two-parent household where the parents are married.
Hmm.
Religious people, their happiness threshold's a little bit higher. This type of thing, and the reason for all of that, uh, it creates these kind of better outcomes generally for kids. And so I think the conservatives latch on to more of that stoic, traditional kind of Christian value structure because it does seem to work really well within the dynamics of a
And yeah,
household.
I would definitely push back on this a little bit. So I agree with you in the sense that a nuclear family, as far as two parents married, raising children, is by far the best environment for a child at the end of the day.
Yeah.
100%. But the thing is, and you might not agree with me on this, but the data also shows pretty significantly that that applies to gay parents also. This isn't a man and a woman. This is just a two-parent household at the end of the day. And a lot of that is stability. A lot of that
It's
is,
interesting though, not with lesbians, just with homosexual males. The
I
outcomes
don't
are
think
far worse.
that's,
Yeah, it's true. The outcomes are far worse for lesbians in general.
I would have to
They
see
are.
which, I would have
Yeah,
to see which one,
the
because
outcomes are far worse for lesbians in general. They go to jail far more often. The children raised by them have worse outcomes more often. It's
I think that
bizarre,
I know they
but
have
it's
usually
true.
worse outcomes by single moms, but based on the data I saw, it was like a really long-term study that looked, I think, internationally too, and basically found that children raised by gay parents, and this was lesbian and straight men, actually the ones that I saw were much more on the lines of raised by two women, and the children fared just as well, if not
Well,
better.
they don't fare just as well, but they fare pretty good.
No, they fared just as
With
well, and in
the
some circumstances, actually even better.
with the lesbian parent. Well, I don't want to get into the data, throwing back data for hours because we'll just be stuck on that for the entire conversation. We don't even have to agree on it. I suppose the most important thing that I'm trying to get across is within the family unit, you can kind
Mhm.
of understand why conservatives, if the happiness threshold is very high, um, and the children's outcomes are very good, why they would want to retain that type of unit
But I
within your
agree
own
with you.
life.
Like
For
I would agree with that though. Like, but I don't think that
yeah,
that's the thing is that oftentimes the conservative thing quickly becomes one man, one woman. That's what's necessary for the children. That's what's best for the children. And then it kind of becomes bigotry a little bit there because one, of course, gay people being unable to naturally reproduce are much more likely to adopt. So they do. And also, like I kind of keep pushing back, keep falling back on, is the data suggests heavily that children fare just as well raised by gay parents. So oftentimes it's like, I understand that the two parents raising a child is the best environment. I concede that hands down. In fact, I was just on a panel not too long ago arguing with someone who was actually a single mom, and I wasn't like morally condemning them or anything, but we were arguing, and I was like, we can't just deny the reality of what the data says, which is two parents raising a child is usually always better than
hmm
like a single mom or whatever. But my question is like, how is the left, quote unquote, like trying to get rid of that?
well, so from the conservative value structures, they're looking at anything that might do anything to break down the government or the infrastructure supporting the dynamic of a mother, father, children dynamic as being diametrically bad because they think that the outcomes are diametrically worse.
I would
So
just,
generally,
where are they saying that's bad? I would,
well, they don't say that it's bad. It's a lack of support structure. So, for instance, you might be able to see a White House covered in a rainbow flag, right?
mhm.
Or in rainbow colors or things like that. That would be your government supporting LGBTQ rights. You and I can agree, of course, that that's what that is. But you
Mm-hmm.
don't generally see the government going out of its way to prop up a two parent household or a dynamic household.
This isn't
That's not
this.
generally something that you see written into policy that's specified.
Don't you get significant like tax cuts when you file jointly when you're married? Like the government
You can get
absolutely.
this. You can also get those tax cuts even if you file when you're unmarried.
No, when you're married though specifically, and especially when you're married with kids and you have dependents, you get all kinds of tax cuts. I know this because I
Sometimes, and
filed.
sometimes it'll also eliminate you from being on any type of state assistance just because they count the two
Well, then we
incomes.
could make. Okay, well then you could maybe say that it has some flaws, but ultimately, at the end of the day, the government absolutely recognizes two parents with children,
No, they
considering
don't.
they
So first of all,
incentivize it. They literally
you're talking
incentivize
about an
it.
earned income child credit. Do you think that you don't have an earned income child credit just because you happen to be a single mom?
What do you mean? Well, if you're a single mom, you would probably apply for some kind of state Medicaid as
Sure,
well, I
you
would
would
assume,
have
right?
some type of state assistance, and you would still be eligible for the same earned income child credit that you would that married couples get, which are $2,000 per child. So the thing is that that's not really an incentive for people to stay married or to bolster their own personal family
But that's
dynamic.
not the
That's more
only
of an
thing. So,
incentive across the board for people to do okay if they have children, regardless of their
which we would probably
circumstance.
agree that that's still a good thing, right? So, like, for example,
Not
if
saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying
but if
from
there's a
their
single
standpoint,
mom, considering from their like, we don't know how they became a single mom. We don't know if the husband just left and was a piece of fucking shit. We don't know if this woman was just raped. Like, we don't really know why this person is a single mom. So I think that one, it's good that the government incentivizes people having children in the first place. Second of all, it's not just the one child tax credits and whatnot. You also get other kinds of tax incentives just for filing jointly when you're married as well. That was part of the fight with gay rights, was that they wanted to be able to file their taxes differently as well. I believe. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that was the case. So, I mean, I would just push back on that. Like, the government having a gay flag on their thing, to me, is like cringy virtue signaling. What does that actually do for gay people other than just, show support, which is still a very important thing. I would actually argue in favor of that ultimately, but that's very minimal compared to like tax breaks and tax incentives and child
well,
tax
I
credits
mean,
with Biden.
what tax incentives do you think that heterosexuals get that homosexuals don't qualify for
No,
exactly?
homosexuals would too. Married couples should. Married couples with
Okay, got
kids
it.
should.
So what
That's
I'm
the
saying
nuclear
is
family,
that
though.
so now you're kind of moving into exactly what I'm talking about, which is that the conservative mindset generally is that they want to find the finest and best outcomes for their prodigy. So within inside of the United States, for instance, 205 million people are Christian. Okay, 205 million out of 330 million identify as Christian.
Hmm.
40% of that's Protestant. If you come from that type of background, family values are going to be very, very important to you. Very important to you. And
But
so
that's
what
where
are
I would
they
push
taught?
back right there is the family values. These
Well,
aren't.
let me just explain and then I'll give it to you. But
All right. Sorry,
what
sorry, sorry.
from their standpoint, they're saying, look, the family value structure that we're after here is we know the outcomes for having a dad and having a mom are pretty much the best outcomes that you can give to children. And the reason that you can pretty much make the affirmative on that, regardless of the data, is because we know and you know that the outcome for your own children would be far different if they didn't have their mother's influence in their life or their father's influence in their life. And it would be a different dynamic if there was two fathers in their life or two mothers in their life. There's
Not
no two ways
necessarily. I
about
mean,
that.
if of course, if my wife, if my kids, my daughter being 2 years old, suddenly my wife was replaced with a different guy. Well, yeah, that would probably scar any child if suddenly their mom has
Right.
vanished. But that's not what we're talking about here. What we're
Right.
talking about are gay couples who are married and then they adopt children. And again, I'm like, this is what I'm pushing back on is I understand that conservatives care about family values. And we agree that a nuclear family, as far as how I define a nuclear family being two parents, married, stable condition,
Sure.
raising the children, but two parents does not have to be a man and a woman. That's where I'm breaking away with the conservatives. So
Sure.
why does
Well, let's just
family
say it doesn't
values
have to
include
be.
discriminating against gay people? So
Right.
like,
Then I'll explain.
well, but
Right.
I want to just follow
I'll
that up
explain it. Oh, sure. Go
with
ahead.
one more quick question, which is what do you think is the better outcome for a child to be raised in like the foster system or being an orphan in like an orphanage or whatnot, or being adopted by a gay couple, considering those
I
were the
think
only
that
two options?
I think that the outcomes would be probably far worse being in the state system than if you were adopted by two homosexual males who had a good income. I'm not even disputing that. I'm not really even here to argue against that one way or the other. I could, but I don't need to. All I need to really do is ask you this very, very easy question, which is you have a mom and you have a dad. Their influences in your life were diametrically different
Mm-hmm.
than if you had had two dads or if you had had two moms. And if you were able to pick yourself right from the beginning, you would not replace the the nurturing nature of what you got from your mother or the type of relationship that you had with your father, because both were necessary in your life, just like in your own children's life.
But
Now that's
no,
the
it's
way, that's the prism that it's looked at from
no,
our
it's
side.
that both parents are just influential. Like, of course, looking back, I wouldn't want to replace my mom with another woman. I wouldn't want to replace my mom because she's my mom and I love her.
Right.
This is sort of like a what? No offense, I don't want to be sound hostile, but I don't really find this hypothetical very compelling. Just because it's not about like replacing anyone. We're not talking about like
No,
taking
what
the
I'm saying
mom
is that
away to
it's just
replace
as
with another
important
dad.
in a child's life to have a female and male
Yeah,
influence.
no, that's where I disagree with you. That's just hasn't been demonstrated significantly at all. In fact,
Well,
a lot of,
does it need to be demonstrated?
I mean, if we
I mean,
have,
we can just observe. We can observe, for instance,
mhm,
that it takes a man to have sex with a woman to have a baby, right?
this
I
doesn't
mean,
matter.
we kind of have to say that nature got it wrong
No, okay.
on the two parent system, don't
So
we?
here's where, no, no, no. So, all right, I'm gonna have to push back on this one too.
And no, it's
So,
not a natural fallacy. I know that's what you're about to say, but it's not.
why would you say it's not?
Because what I'm asking you specifically is a biological question.
Mm-hmm.
And the biological question is, why is it that it takes a male and a female to have a child?
Because that's how you reproduce.
That's how you reproduce. So
But it doesn't always, but that doesn't
if that's
always
how you
mean that.
reproduce, there's an attachment that happens with the man and the woman for these children that's intrinsic. And all I'm saying to you is I'm just giving you the conservative side. I'm not here to debate with you or be hostile with you at all.
No, I know.
I'm just giving you
But I want to push back on it. I want to give my side too. You know.
yeah, I'm just saying that from our side, we look at it and we're saying, listen, it's just as important that you can't replace a mother's influence with a father's influence, nor can you replace a father's influence with a mother's. It takes both to have the best dynamic inside of a family structure. And almost everybody you talk to who has the outcome of good parentage from both a man and a woman, they seem to have the best outcomes every single time. Uh, and
That's
that's
not
pretty
always
much it.
true. I mean, look at like
It's not always
there are
true.
kids plenty times that are raised by two parents that might be fighting all the time. That's certainly not as good of an environment. But the thing is I'm pushing back on the natural thing because just if it takes a man and a woman to reproduce,
Mm-hmm.
it's irrelevant. Like this is looking at like a completely different dichotomy. You're
I
making a
think that the
dichotomy where
why is relevant. I think
well,
that
here's
asking
why it's not
why that
relevant is
appears that way.
I'll tell you why it's not relevant. It's because we don't decide what's the best thing to do or what would be the morally correct thing to do or really anything based on nature. Just if it takes a man and a woman to reproduce does not at all always mean, or again, does not even mean that a man and a woman, a masculine and a feminine person is necessary for children, especially considering that the masculine and feminine roles and how that looked throughout history has changed and kids were raised under those influences also. So I really disagree with that, honestly. And again, we can look at, I keep deferring to the data because you keep saying that, like, well, we can talk to people, and sure, like, people raised by two loving married parents with a stable income are going to fare well, absolutely. But this can apply to gay people also. And again, we're not looking at like replacing people's parents. You have to look at it realistically. These are children that are in orphanages that gay people are statistically way more likely to adopt, obviously. Like, these are children that need a home. I think it's a pretty conservative value to be incentivizing just families in general. Like, I
How
feel
come,
like
Hunter? Why do you think it is that children who are raised by homosexuals are more likely to be homosexual?
is that even true?
It's true. Look it up. I'll take your time.
All right, I'll look it up. Let's see. I see one doing better in school. Are you talking about an NBC article? Adult children
No,
of
this
lesbian
is
parents less likely to identify as straight, study finds. They're significantly more likely to report same-sex attraction, sexual minority identity, and same-sex experience than the general population.
why do you think it is that same-sex couples who raise children, that those children are more likely to end up having proclivities towards homosexuality?
Because maybe these kids are raised in an environment where they're just more accepting generally. Maybe they're just more in touch with their gender,
But I thought
considering
that
the
we
fact
could
maybe they're
wait.
more.
I thought that we couldn't help what secondary sexual characteristics we were attracted to, Hunter.
Wait, you mean what primary sexual characteristics we're
No,
attracted to?
secondary sexual characteristics, not primary. Secondary.
You're gonna have to
Secondary
elaborate
sexual
more.
characteristics would be like, I'm attracted to you because you have long hair and blue eyes. It's the transgender argument, essentially. They ask, shouldn't you be attracted to the secondary sexual characteristics? So if that's the case and you can't help it,
Mm-hmm.
it's odd to me. You kind of come into this bizarre logic trap, don't you, where it's very strange that children who are raised by homosexuals end up being more likely to be homosexuals themselves, if at the same time you say you can't help what you're attracted to.
Let's see. Of the 76 children of lesbian parents, 70% of females and 90% of males identified as heterosexual or straight, compared to 88% of females and 98% of males. Further, 54% of women and 33% of men with lesbian parents reported having a same-sex sexual experience between the ages of 17 and 25, compared to 38% of women and 9% of men. So, like, what are you trying to get at here? So there's a variety of.
What I'm trying to say is that
There's a variety. Well, wait. I guess I
Well,
asked the
you
question,
asked.
so go ahead.
Yeah, you asked. I'm sorry. I was just trying. You can go ahead, man.
It's just, no. Please elaborate more. Like, what are you trying to say, that like they're giving the
What I'm
gay to
saying
the
is
kids? Like,
that
what's
what I'm
the
saying is that
implication here?
I'm very good faith when it comes to the transgender argument or the homosexual argument or any of these arguments. There's lots of people you'll find in my Discord who are transgender themselves. We have long conversations about this because I'm highly interested in this subject among many other subjects. And one of the things that I've noted that is this kind of bizarre contradiction is that it's emphatically stated as a prescription of transgenders that, hey, people can't help the secondary sex characteristics that they're attracted to. But at the same time, it's bizarre to me that children of homosexuals who are raised by homosexuals often seem to be more likely to be homosexual. I can't reconcile that I just can't reconcile it.
So there's a variety of different reasons why this is. So one, if you look at the general population, the amount of people coming out as gay in general is rising, right? So it only makes sense that if you're raised by lesbian parents, you might absolutely be in an environment where it's a little bit more progressive, more accepting, and you're more likely to come out. Who's to say these people weren't born gay and then they've come out later in life? Most likely they were. Some people, by the way, who end up not actually being gay do explore, do fuck around, and end up not really being into it at the end of the day. I never did, not a fan of that really, but some people do, and that doesn't like mean that they're gay again. we want to look at it, if you want to talk about like how much of it is a choice, how much of it is biological. I think that it's like nurture and nature is like a 30-70 split, right? So there absolutely is like there is absolutely like a genetic um uh predisposition to being gay, I believe is the right way to put it.
And it happens to increase if your parents are gay. That's odd.
No, so why? But it's not just that the parents are gay; it's also that the parents are progressive. So I guarantee you could find an increase in gay people or whatever in progressive spaces in general. Again, this is because the acceptance of gay people is rising. So you're going to see an uptick of individuals coming out as gay regardless. If they have lesbian parents, they might just believe that it's very likely that their parents
You
may
don't
be
find
more
it
likely to be
interesting at all
accepting.
that as the environment has become more inclusive or more conducive towards homosexual activity, that there's a rise in homosexuals, and you claim that there's a
No, not at all.
percentage of that that's
Nope.
environmental, and you don't think that there's any environmental correlation at all.
No, so when I say there's an environmental, there's like absolutely like some kind of a social element of like how you are going to express the fact that you are gay. Some people like again, some people are bisexual, some people do experiment, some people are gay, some people are lesbian, whatever. But um hold on. I'm sorry. I can you repeat your question?
Well, I was just saying, if there's an environmental factor, doesn't it
Uh-huh.
stand to reason that your parents would be a large part of whatever your environmental factor would be?
Um I, I mean possibly.
Well, they're
What do
going
you
to produce
mean?
the environment that you're raised in. Like you produce the environment your children are raised in. Their value structure is going to come from your and your wife's value
Well,
structures.
I want to address
That's
something you said earlier first is why is it that more people are being coming out as gay now that society is becoming more accepting? This is just the common trend historically. This is always what happens as society progresses and society becomes more accepting of a certain thing, we see that thing become more common. A perfect example of this is interracial marriage. So at one point it was illegal and then it wasn't illegal and now you can look and interracial marriage continues to grow uptick to this day
good.
because it's become more socially
Yeah,
acceptable
sure,
also.
good. And I'm not disputing that at all, but I do have to ask you this.
Mm-hmm.
If there's an environmental factor that's applied to homosexuality, and there must be because you can't put a genetic factor. There is none. There's no gay gene, for instance, right? Nobody. There's
Well,
no
it's not like
proof that
one single gene, but there absolutely is like a genetic predisposition to being gay. For example, if
there's
you want to defer to nature, which we
possible.
have to,
No, no, there's not. There is no cluster of genes that you can provide that would make a person gay. No.
the, you, first, so, okay, hold on. But do you understand what I mean when I say that like society's becoming more accepting? So it just only makes sense that we're going to see like an uptick of people that are more comfortable
Yeah,
coming
so
out as gay.
that's my point actually. Is like if we're talking about environmental factors, if the environment becomes more conducive towards an activity, it does make sense that people go towards it, right? But then what the conservative value structure is looking at is they're like, okay, but that looks like grooming to us.
Okay, here we go. So this is what I'm looking at. So again, I agree with you. There is no gay gene. There's absolutely no like single gene.
Yeah.
I'm putting this up here on my screen really quickly. It says there's no gay gene, says lead study author, a geneticist at the Broad Institute of MIT. They conducted a really big study. Um, and then they said they used the analysis to estimate that up to 25% of sexual behavior can be explained by genetics, with the rest influenced by environmental and cultural factors, a figure similar to the findings of smaller
So
studies.
75% of sexual activity is influenced by environment, and people who are raised by homosexuals are more likely to be homosexual, and you don't see that there's a correlation there, though.
I mean, even if there is that a problem?
Well, I think that there is a problem probably from the conservative side because they see that as a breakdown of the family unit because they think of it as grooming.
Do they think that like divorced people is a breakdown of family unit and like single
Too.
moms who
Yeah, yeah. So the
so this
one of the
is
big critiques from the conservative side would be no fault divorce, for instance. No fault divorce, kind of. For instance, here's something maybe you don't know. Most divorces are initiated by women overwhelmingly. It's not
I
even close.
understand that. Yes, I know.
Yeah. Why? Well, why do you think that is?
I don't know, women are more likely to be unhappy as the marriage progresses, for a variety of different reasons. Sometimes it's on the guy. What do you?
Could it? Well, so the reason that I bring this up is because let's just assume for a second that when you're talking about no fault divorce, if the penalties were worse for the man than they were for the woman, wouldn't that actually end up kind of creating an incentive for the woman to get divorced if she was unhappy rather than working out her familial problems with her husband?
I don't know. I feel that this is getting a little bit off subject. I kind of want to get back to what you were saying before about with the like people coming out as gay when I'm asking if it was more of a problem. The thing is that it really isn't a problem. If there are more people like even if it is somewhat influenced by an environmental factor in their life and then they decide to be gay and they're living their lives happier that way, I see no problem with that at all. Like,
What about grooming?
is it grooming? If they say sexual behavior, so that would go just the same way with heterosexual as well. Heterosexual.
Uh,
So is it grooming your kids then as well?
uh, Take that for a second, and we'll explore it. Okay. If you're more likely to be a heterosexual if you're raised by heterosexual parents, and you're more likely to be a homosexual if you're raised by homosexual parents, okay? And you're saying that both of those, if you can agree with me that both of those are grooming, then I'll concede that point.
I don't think that it's grooming. No, I think that people are
Okay.
influenced by their environments,
Okay,
of
gotcha.
course. Now, if
So
you're
then
now if
that
the
question didn't really make any sense then
no, it
if you
does
weren't
make sense.
asking it in good faith.
No, I was because you said that the conservatives would say that's grooming for if the environmental factors influences the child to be gay. And I'm saying this study says that environmental factors play a role in sexual behavior in general.
Yeah.
So then the grooming argument could also be applied to straight couples.
Well,
That was a direct defeater to the
it's
argument. That
grooming.
wasn't bad faith.
Well, I'm just gonna grant it, and we're just gonna say it's grooming on both sides. Okay. If that's the case,
I
then
don't
it
agree with
does seem that what you're attracted to can indeed be influenced specifically by who you're raised by.
that. I mean, there are some like again there are some like there's certain variances. I don't know what you mean. Like if you want to talk about grooming, like of course if someone was sitting their kid down and they were like, look at me, you're lesbian, okay, you like women, okay, this is who you like, that would be really gross. Yeah, but oftentimes what do you see? You oftentimes will see kids that have to repress the fact that they're gay because they're raised in an environment where they're told that being gay is a bad thing and they kind of have to repress that. If anything, you might say that that's actually, I mean, it's actually been proven to be far more harmful than this.
But
Isn't it grooming for environmental?
you can't think that homosexual couples just so happen to only adopt the homosexual children, right? So we have to look at the environmental factor.
I'm
And
not
if the
denying the
environmental
environmental
factor is if
factors.
the environmental factor is 75%, then look, we really have to start looking at this a little bit more objectively in good faith, I think, and say, look, it does appear that there is a correlation between how you're raised and what you are attracted to or are not attracted to, and this type of thing. That these aren't necessarily things that you just can't help. You know what I mean?
Well,
That's our whole
it isn't
point.
just the thing is that it is because some people are gay and then they're forced to repress that, but it can also be influenced by their environment, some of their sexual behavior. So like again, when you say that this is grooming, that ultimately implies like a form of intent. Everyone is ultimately a product of their environment. Of course, if like think about it this way, in some areas if you're like think about how you're like if someone was raised in a different country, right? Like they have a completely different idea and perception of morality sometimes. Like it's obvious that it, I'm getting kind of
You're
I'm
well,
getting a
you're actually kind of making my point for me. So
how
I,
am I
I
making
agree.
your point for you? I think
Well,
that we're having a
because I
disconnect
agree
here.
with you 100%. What we're talking about is if we're talking about what you would call like these trad principles, these traditional principles,
Mm-hmm.
it does seem that parents who have a man and a woman who are mom and dad who
Mm-hmm.
raise the children have a far more likelihood that their children are going to end up being heterosexuals and are going to follow the same pattern. Yet, if they're raised by homosexuals, there's a far greater likelihood that the children are going to end up themselves being homosexuals or being exposed to homosexuality or being somebody who at least experiments with homosexuality. So this is
So
a
it comes
massive,
back to them not liking
well,
gay
so
people.
hang on. So this is a massive environmental influence that's done directly from the way that you're raised inside your family. So of course, traditional Christians are going to consider that to be an attack. Why wouldn't they consider that to be an attack? They would say, look, this is a worse outcome than
But it's not.
if you were to tell people we should have this more traditional style family.
No, I would majorly push back on that. Who cares? Who gives a fuck? Why do you care? Who cares?
Well, because it's diametrically opposed to our religion, for one.
Why? So it all comes back to gay people bad then. So then what I would say is,
well, no, it's not really. So I
yes,
think that's
hold on, wait.
I think that's a gross mischaracterization.
That is absolutely what it comes down to. You said the kids would be exposed to gay people. They might be more likely to be gay. So fucking what? Who cares? I don't care. If this is why I push back on the quote unquote conservative values. This is exactly from my perspective, is because it's your perspective that actually leads to more harm. So, for example, a lot of the negative outcomes for gay people in society come from discrimination and bigotry, which is ultimately perpetuated by people on the right. Yet they then try to say that, well, being gay is bad because sometimes you face discrimination or this, that. They kind of create the problem that they then complain about and also try to then condemn on the gay people about.
Do you know what the categorical imperative is?
Well, I don't really want to get to that just yet because it's just, this doesn't matter. Like if a conservative came to me and said, hey, the reason that I'm a conservative is that I don't want people to end up being gay. If they are raised by gay parents, they might be more likely to be gay. So I don't want them to be gay. Then I would say, why is that a bad thing? Why is it bad to be gay?
I'm going to tell you.
Okay.
Do you know what the categorical imperative is?
No, please explain.
The categorical imperative is a Kantian form of ethics, essentially. And what it says is, if everybody does this thing, what happens? Right? That's just a rough breakdown. So let's assume for a second that everybody in society is a heterosexual. The complications of that are pretty much none. But if everybody in society was a homosexual, the complications of that would be extinction.
This doesn't matter. This is, well, I'm going to just dismiss this, but
I'm just explaining to you that this type of ethics is widely thought about and agreed upon.
I don't care.
I know you don't.
If everyone
care,
was 2 years old, society would stop functioning.
I'm not arguing with you. I'm just trying to explain to you the perspective so that you understand that this type of ethics actually came from a Christian form of ethics. And so the reason that we think about things in terms is because we try to figure out what's moral and what's immoral. That's why.
So I would completely push back on that. Of course, you could make that kind of imperative for anything. If everybody was 2 years old, if everybody was just 2 years old right now, society would stop functioning. Sure.
Right.
The thing is,
so that would be bad.
The thing is that it doesn't matter. If all of society was one thing, if all of society was anything, that would be bad. Society needs variance in order to survive, of course.
Now you're getting it. You're absolutely right.
So homosexuals fall in line with that, my friend. Right? So
no.
Yes, just if all of society wouldn't function if everyone was gay, doesn't mean that being gay in and of itself is bad.
Society would function if everybody was a heterosexual, right?
Would society stop functioning if everybody was like 3 years old?
No. So it would be bad then if everybody was 3 years old. We can agree on that.
So is it bad to be 3 years old?
No.
So then how are you making the claim that it's bad to be gay?
Because we're saying if everybody was 3 years old, it would be bad.
And you're saying if everybody was gay, it would be bad.
Right.
So how is it different?
It's not different. You're kind of tangling yourself up here.
No, I'm just what you're saying to me right now is so like bizarre. Like I'm trying to engage here in good faith, but like if someone brought that argument to me, like I would ultimately just want to laugh in their face. Like society would cease to function properly if everyone became a certain way in any instance. But that doesn't mean that thing is true. That doesn't mean
that's not true.
In
like if everybody in society,
in almost
for
any
instance,
for example,
right? So if everybody in society, for instance, lost their pinky finger, right? Society wouldn't just break down and stop working. Okay, it wouldn't just break down and stop working. However, if everybody in society was homosexual and no longer had kids, we'd be extinct within 2 generations.
I don't
That would
care.
be
Yeah,
bad.
I would just tell them to fuck off then. So basically what you have is a hypothetical la la land saying, well, if everything was this way,
No, I'm
society
telling
would
you
be
about
scary.
Kantian and
No, no, no. So I would
ethical system.
no, no, I understand. So what I would say to that ethical system is that ethical system is incredibly stupid. And basically what it is a fairy tale where, well, if everything became this way, then it would be bad. So therefore gay people bad? No, fuck that. If
Well,
your
where do you drive
ethic,
your
well,
ethics?
let me tell you something. If your ethics or whatnot comes from this idea that you means that you can start like just oppressing gay people, even though there's one, no evidence that they do a harm to anyone, two, that there's no harm in being gay, and three, that gay people do just as well raising kids as straight people. So there's no like proof that being gay is actually harmful or a bad thing in any way, because it's not. So like, what do you?
Well, is your ethical system only derived on things that you think are bad
Why do we need it?
outcomes?
We don't need to get into an ethical system or
Well,
an ethical
I'm
conversation
just
here.
trying to explain to you, it's very important that we know why you think things are good or bad. And the reason that that's good to know is because then we can be on the same page for what you and I consider good or bad, and we can have a conversation about those things. So you say, for instance, Andrew, tell me why homosexuality is bad. And I go, okay, here's why. And you go, well, I reject that. Okay, fair enough. And you tell me what your system is for what you consider things being good or bad.
So
I
my
think it's just
system
based
is
on harm,
based.
right?
Okay, let me explain. So my system is based on reality, not on like a hypothetical. If society was like this, therefore bad. That doesn't really make sense at all. Like you could literally argue that if all of society became Christian, it would be bad, considering some of the rates of like abuse and rape in some of the churches and religious circles and whatnot. Like you could make this claim with other things as well. So again, I would just push back on that. I would say that's kind of a silly ethics system, because you could make an argument with that with a lot of other things, and that's silly to
Right. So, I
condemn
mean, that's
something.
what I'm asking is what's your
So
ethical?
my ethical system in this case would be, well, yes, let's reduce harm in this case, and your thing would not be doing that. You're basically, the reason I'm pushing back on that is because I want to reduce harm. Your argument is to continue perpetuating harm, continue oppressing gay people in order to meet some kind of ethical standard, because if everyone was gay, it would be
I didn't say
bad.
anything about oppressing anybody. I
Well,
was
that would
just,
have to be the outcome of it, of course.
well, no, they wouldn't have to be. So you could frame it however you wanted to as a logical exercise. We don't need to. We don't need to do. It's not important. I'm just explaining to you from my standpoint, the biggest weakness that you have, and it's going forward, it's going to be a bad one for you, is if you cannot decide on what the ethics are from which you derive your argumentation. As you start to slug it out with some of these heavy hitters, they're going to absolutely come in and eat your heart. And the reason is you can't really have a good faith or legitimate conversation with somebody unless you know why it is and the
Oh, I can
foundation
tell
of
you why
why
I'm
they think.
against, but I can tell you why I'm against what you're
Well,
saying
not
right now.
against a
It's
specific thing, but if I ask you why a thing is bad, for instance, if I said, why is smoking bad? You'd say, well, because it's going to kill you. And I'd say, okay, why is me killing myself with smoking bad?
uh-huh.
Well, why is it? Why is
Well,
killing
because
myself with
most
smoking
likely you
bad?
don't want to die.
Well, okay.
If you do,
So you
then it's
think,
probably not bad to you, right?
so
But
you
like
only think
in
that it's
your
bad.
case, no, but
Yeah.
in your case, it's from, or I'm sorry, not in your case necessarily, but from the quote unquote conservative perspective or whatever, it is, we don't want to incentivize gay people. So let's think of this, how this is. There are kids in orphanages, and conservatives historically and still currently are oftentimes the ones trying to prevent gay people from adopting children, even though there are kids in orphanages that literally need parents. So there's that, which would, yes, that's discrimination. So that would have to be perpetuated. And why are we doing this? All because if all of society was hypothetically gay, it would cease to function. Again, I would say if all of society was religious, it would probably cease to function, considering, again, the statistical rates of abuse in church circles and different kind of rates also showing how Christians are more likely to put their faith over actual scientific research as well. So I think that you can make a
But
compelling
there are
argument there too.
societies right now that are 100% religious and function just fine.
And there are societies that are 100% atheist and function just fine too, is my
Well, sure, but
knowledge.
I'm not. That wasn't my argument. It had nothing to do with my argument. One of your arguments was to say to me, "Listen, if everybody was religious, right?
Hmm.
That would also be bad. But we have societies we can look at right now where everybody's religious. It's not bad.
What religion?
Uh, Muslim, for instance,
Okay,
there's
cool. Well, I didn't.
there's
That's very
entire
progressive of you. I'm actually surprised, but
there's entire well, this the diametric opposition between
I should
Christianity.
rephrase then. Yes, I should say like fundamentalist Christians. Let me rephrase. I
Well,
will rephrase that because that's much more where we see a lot of these issues. So let me be clear: not religious circles, but yes,
mhm.
fundamentalist like Christians, evangelical Christians, that kind of level. Yes, I do think that that would also perpetuate harm or would also lead to society or not functioning nearly as well or whatnot.
Well,
Um,
society functions fine under Sharia law.
So I'm talking about fundamental Christianity. I'm not here to
Well,
defend
but
Islam.
those are
I'm not a big fan of.
fundamental.
I don't like religion in general. So I'm happy to shit on Islam. I'm happy to shit on Christianity. Like, but
Well,
at
what's
the
your
end of the
problem with fundamental Christians?
well, hold on. I don't want again, it's because of the rates of discrimination and the harm that they perpetuate. So like even if you look at the rates, actually American Muslims are more accepting of gay people, for example, than evangelical white Christians. And that does harm. That hurts people. That discriminates against not only gay people, but again, we've already established that by preventing them from adopting, you're also harming children. You're
I
literally
didn't.
harming the children that are in orphanages right now
I didn't.
suffering.
Hunter, you're creating arguments against things I'm not talking about.
I'm not. I'm
I
explaining
need
how
you
white
I need you to
evangelicals
listen
are
listen very
making more
closely to
harm.
what I'm saying. What's the problem with fundamental Christianity in your worldview? That they cause harm to homosexuals because they're not accepting?
That they cause harm to, yes, in general, to society. Yes, they cause harm in various different ways. So, one, yes, they discriminate against gay people at higher rates. I don't like that. That does harm.
Much higher rates. Much
Yes,
higher rates.
and it's discriminatory, and so I'm against that. I don't like that because, again, it perpetuates harm and it hurts kids in orphanages, etc., etc. We've kind of already established this. Also, white evangelical Christians are more likely to deny things like climate change, something that I think is very important that we kind of all need to find unity on. It's really important for like the future moving forward here. White evangelical Christians are against that. That's another thing. Another reason. There are statistics showing that oftentimes hyper-religious individuals are more likely to put their faith over scientific evidence. Anti-intellectualism has already cost us with COVID, with how we've seen the like conspiratorial bullshit, the anti-vaxxers and whatnot. So yes, there is a multitude of harm that white evangelicals perpetuate on this country or could hypothetically. So I think that your argument would be completely doomed. It would
So
have to, it would
now,
be
so now answer me this, now that we've established this.
Mhm.
Is the happiness level in people who are Christians higher or lower than the average population in the United States?
So I'm going to answer
No, no,
this.
no, just yes or no. Is it
No,
higher
no,
or
I'm not.
lower?
I'm not going to answer it unless I can elaborate because the
Okay.
answer it needs an elaboration there. So,
Mhm.
yes, absolutely. Yep, you're right. People in religious circles do have happier or
So
higher
doesn't
rates of
it do them
happiness.
harm if you were to
So,
take that away from them?
sure, yes. So here's
So
the
now
thing:
we're
is
talking
hold
about
on, wait, 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 wait,
which
wait,
is
wait,
more
wait, hold
harm.
on, wait, 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 because it's not the religious aspect of it, but rather the community aspect of it. So if you were to gauge like a group of people that say every like Saturday they went to some like big community event with like community picnic and then went bowling or whatnot, you would find higher rates of happiness in those people as well. Having a structured community is what gives you that higher level of happiness. And again, I'm not shitting on all of religion. My parents are very religious. I respect them for that, and that's because I recognize that for them it is a form of community, and that's important for
What I'm
people.
trying to get to the heart of here is that it seems like your issues are secondary to the religion. You're saying this is how religious people behave in this political sense that I disagree with.
Hmm.
I'm asking, what are your fundamental problems with the religion itself?
Oh, you want to talk about like Christianity? Is
Well, if
that?
you have a problem with Christianity, yeah.
I mean, I'm not really too. To be fair, I'm not. I don't think I'm too interested. I don't think I can get too into a deep theological talk.
Well, I'm not really trying to get into a deep theological talk. What I'm trying to discuss here is the
No, I'll dial it.
motivations.
I'll listen. Dial it. I'll dial it back here. Get personal for a second. I have admitted this multiple times on stream. I have a little bit of like resentment with how religion was taught to me personally. So I don't I try to steer clear of like the deep theological debates about Christianity. My general summary, if you don't mind, really quick, and I'll hand it over
Sure.
to you, is just that yes, people who have a sense of community, whether that be a secular sense of community or a religious circle and sense of community, is absolutely beneficial and has been proven to be such. I'm not advocating to take any of that away. I'm fine with people going to church. I'm fine with people being religious. I was raised as a Christian. I think there are some good like parts of the Bible. There are some good things you can take away from religion. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-religion here. My argument ultimately was that white evangelical, the fundamentalist Christians, those are more of the people that I'm concerned about on a statistical level. And it doesn't mean they can't be reached, but it just means that they would be more likely to perpetuate harm. And again, there's nothing harmful with being gay
But
at
what
all.
about the harm perpetuated against them for telling them that their beliefs are incorrect, even though their happiness level is higher?
Well, what do you mean? Their beliefs.
So
No,
what
I'm
I'm
not.
asking is, why is it that we should sacrifice the happiness of 200 million people in order to accommodate this small handful of people?
Well, I'm not trying to. I'm not trying to get rid of anything, though. This is the thing. No one
Well, do
is.
you don't think that homosexual marriage, for instance, is a complete slap in the face towards Christians?
Well,
Their
even if
fundamental belief structure
so, then this
says
is
that
where we would
marriage
have
is
to.
between one man and one
So
woman.
this is where we'd
And
have
you
to.
say your happiness level for your religion needs to be completely eradicated in
No, no,
order
no, no,
to
no, 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 no.
accommodate these people here.
Hold on. This is pushing me into like trying to push me into like a bad optical corner here. But no, not at all.
I'm not trying to.
I know, but it's not. Hold on. We're not. I'm sorry. I'm trying. I got super distracted at the chat at the last second there.
It's
Could you
okay.
repeat what you said again? I apologize.
Yeah.
I
So
know.
what I'm saying is
Acknowledge.
that
Hold on. I'd just like to also point out I'm having a bit of a slow night tonight, so
it's okay. So
defense, putting it up,
I'm
honey.
just pointing out from the Christian side, they think to themselves, look,
Mm-hmm.
marriage is a religious institution to them. It's not a political institution.
Right. So
Okay. They
okay.
don't think of it
Yes.
that way.
So this is
They
what I
think of it
would.
as a religious institution, and they think that the institution, if you allow homosexuals to become marriage, is destroying the institution of their very
But it's
faith
not.
and grounding that they walk on.
But it's not the government's job to uphold any one religion. This has already been established by the Constitution, and it's a known fact that like we have separation of church and state in many ways.
Well, then
So
why is it that the government issues marriage licenses at all? Why don't they just stay out of it?
I would agree with you. That's what honestly I would fucking love that. Yes, ultimately that
So
would.
if that's the case, then why would you be angry about something that's not called marriage but gives you all the rights to marriage?
Well, I didn't know if I did. I ever say I was angry about that? I didn't.
Well,
I don't
right.
think so.
So one of the
I
things
think I
that
talked about the tax incentives. I'm not sure what that.
well, so one of the things that homosexual advocates did, there was something that was there in place for these people, for homosexuals, that was designed specifically,
Oh yeah, the
and it was
civil
called a
union
civil
thing.
union.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but civil unions weren't good enough. It had to be marriage.
I don't
Why
know.
is
I
it
don't
that
know all the ins and outs, but I don't really. I don't think I need to get into that. Like, no one's trying to take away anyone's happiness level, and we could just as easily flip this on its head and say that white evangelicals restricting people from getting married and living their lives freely, pursuing their right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that would restrict their happiness. What about gay people not being able to get married? What about two
that's
people that love each
right?
other and can't get
This is
married?
the fundamental question that we're coming to. This is why I'm bringing this up is, do we sacrifice the happiness of the 200 million people who believe in this institution as a religious institution for the people who believe that it's a secular
Oh yeah,
institution?
100%. Because
And
we just as easily, again, I'm going to defer you back to slavery. We sacrificed the happiness of a whole lot of Southerners when all of a sudden we made slavery illegal. But it doesn't mean that it wasn't the right thing to do, my dude. So absolutely yes. In some instances, you have to sacrifice the quote unquote happiness. But again, that would be flipping it on them. Why are they unhappy with the fact that gay people are getting married? They don't have a right. I'm sorry. Their religion does not have a right to dictate how the government is run. There needs to be a separation.
there's no government right anywhere in the United States Constitution for them to issue a marriage license at
It
the
is a
federal level.
so it's a state thing, right?
Well, it should be a 10th Amendment thing, but the Supreme Court interpreted the Constitution and applied it towards a non-discrimination clause, which was designed for Black people, had nothing to do with homosexuals at all.
Perfect. So
So
that's
yes, it should have defaulted to a 10th Amendment, and anytime it did default to a 10th Amendment, it was voted down.
Yeah, no, because it's this that would probably violate discrimination laws and all sorts of things. At the end of the day, if it is a state or federal institution, it doesn't really matter. You have it's a secular institution at the end of the day. You have no one religion, and just if Christians are unhappy with the fact that gay people can also get married, too fucking bad. Those are the people that cry nonstop about facts over feelings. Well, take your feelings elsewhere. We just talked about toxic masculinity. This is a perfect time where it calls for stoicism. All right, guys?
What about
Suck it up.
whiplash? So if you say that it's okay for
No, this is
groups,
about this. This was the same
but if
thing
you
that
say
happened
that
with
it's
black
okay,
people with whiplash.
well, listen, if you say that it's okay for political groups to apply political pressure in order to make religious ceremonies politicized for whatever
How?
reason, for whatever
Where?
gain you want, then you can't be upset if Christians get together,
Are
okay,
Christians forced?
and then vote against those same interests. You can't call them bigots and things like this. As what you're doing is you're saying one side can use political power, the institution, the other side can't.
No, it's that the institution and the Constitution and the way that America fundamentally operates is that it is ultimately a secular government. It is not supposed to uphold one religion. So if it is a state...
What do you mean it's a secular government? That's an untrue statement.
No, I know that the founders were religious, but ultimately it is. It is a secular government.
No, it just says that Congress in the First Amendment just says that Congress can't make a law that favors one religion.
Okay, so any kind of, right. So in another way, if some kind of a state or federal institution is restricting someone from living their lives freely and pursuing their rights, then absolutely it makes sense to intervene there.
Oh, I see. So how many people in Congress do you think identify as being Christian?
Movements in France and separation of church and state in the United States have defined modern concepts of secularism, the United States of America being the first explicitly secular nation both in Western and world history. Thank you, Wikipedia.
I'm trying to walk you through this so that you understand what I'm saying to you.
I don't want to be walked through this. I don't need to be walked through this.
If a person is a Christian and they're a politician, or do you think that they're going to legislate policy based on their Christian values?
How would you feel about Muslims saying, well, we want our religion to be that anytime a woman goes in and submits a divorce, that she should receive 70 lashings in the streets?
It has nothing to do with what I'm saying.
No, that's their religion, though, right? It offends them when women get religious.
But I'm asking you something
they get
very
divorced,
specific. If you're a politician and you're a Christian and you're legislating, you're a legislator, do you think that your Christian value structure is going to have any meaning in the way that you legislate?
Sure, and it absolutely can. Sure. But
again,
so
it can't really be a secular state.
If your religion starts restricting other people's rights, then all of a sudden we have a problem there. Yes. So your religion can play a role in how you interpret things or in how you handle certain political pressures. That's fine. Go for it. To be my guest, my dude. But no, it doesn't mean that you get to invoke your religion to somehow restrict other people's rights. And in this case, something that you and yourself just read to me was that the Supreme Court ruled that it was discriminatory in order to discriminate against gay people as far as the marriage licenses or allowing them to get married. So yes, America is a secular country. We have this now established. It is not supposed to support and invoke one religion. Rights extend equally across the board, or at least they're supposed to. And in this case, this absolutely applies to gay people getting married also, if they're, over the age of 18 and consensual. Again, this is more of a question of the church. Now, what the dichotomy you're trying to set up here is the white evangelicals trying to restrict.
What do you mean the white evangelicals?
The people
blacks
that are
were the
people
blacks
that are
were the deciding vote in California for voting down gay marriage, not whites.
I don't know what that has to do with anything.
I just don't understand why you keep saying white evangelicals.
Well, I bring up white evangelical Christians because of the Pew Research, which shows that they're the least accepting of homosexuals out of everyone, even Muslims being more so. Which is honestly, I
got it.
So
what I'm after here, I understand what you're saying, but I feel like you're listening to me, but you're not hearing me. You're just ready to jump to the argument. Just listen to what I'm saying. It's very important. What I'm saying to you is this. If a person can legislate and their religion is a major portion of what they're legislating and why they're legislating that thing, then you can't really have a secular state. You can have a separation where you can't defer to a singular religion over another religion. But if most of your politicians are religious and they're legislating from that value structure, then you can't actually have a secular state. It doesn't work that way.
What if there's a bunch of atheists in there too?
Same. It'd be the same thing
So would it be
applied.
a secular
If they
state
were
then?
all atheists, then sure, you could
So
say that
what,
that would be
just to
a
be
secular
fair,
state.
again, I already addressed this. I am listening to this. I've already addressed this, I feel. Yes, they are influenced by some of their religion, but their religion should not blind them from how they interpret the law. I mean, what the fuck?
All of our
This would be
law is based on
delusional.
religion.
Like, this is
All of our law is based on religion, though.
this sounds like even like a really like low understanding of Christians in general. Like, they're able to decipher the difference between like their religious
Do you think
beliefs.
that I have a low understanding of Christianity?
No, I'm saying that it would be lame to try and like, no, I'm saying that it would be you seem to have a low opinion of Christians when you're talking about and making it sound like they're just gonna just like trample all over the Constitution, trample all over how they're supposed to interpret the law just because they're religious. Like, I think that they can have religion and that can sway them and maybe motivate them in some ways, but ultimately it shouldn't blind them to interpreting the law fairly and equally. And this is why even like Christian justices have ruled in favor of gay people and have ruled against discrimination and whatnot. Like, it's because this is how they interpret the law. So again, I've answered your question. Yes, they might be influenced by their religion. When I say it's a secular country, what I mean again is that America cannot defer or favor one religion over another. So restricting gay people's right to get married and be recognized by the state as a married couple because conservatives are mad would be a violation of that principle. It would be a violation of the foundation of America, and this is why even the Christian conservatives who have their religious sways agree with me mostly.
Do you believe in democracy?
Sure.
Then how come people weren't allowed to have a vote?
Because you don't. Okay, so I believe in democracy in some things, but I don't think you get to vote on people's rights. Again, people would be able to vote. People would have not voted for the slaves to be set free. People would have voted in favor of slavery. Democracy works in some ways. This is why we have a democratic republic, so that we have elected individuals that work on our behalf largely. But there are some things that, again, this is why we have the law. We don't want the country voting on everything. I don't want the country voting on whether or not I should get the death sentence because one day I don't want this country voting on everything. No, that would be silly, right?
So then pure democracy would be bad.
I mean, did I ever advocate for pure democracy?
I'm not saying that you did. I'm just asking you a question.
I mean, to be fair, I haven't like thought super in depthly about the like intrinsic nature of like democracy and whatnot. I do recognize that a pure democracy would, yes, probably be flawed if every single thing was voted on. Yeah, you need
Like
some
workplace,
structure.
like a workplace democracy, for instance.
I mean, there are workplace co-ops which can be like different. That's an entirely different thing. That's not voting on people's rights. And even if you tried to, that would be, you'd have to step in. So like if a worker co-op, for example, said, we don't want to hire black people, like maybe they all vote, well, we're a union, we're a worker co-op, we don't want black people in. The government at that point would be able to step in and say, no, you're violating the law.
So then that wouldn't be pure democracy.
Yeah, no, there shouldn't be. If that's what you consider pure democracy, then no. I'm not some like crazy leftist here. I'm a social democrat.
Well, right. We're just gauging where you're at. Okay. So the thing is that what I'm trying to get across to you we're going to fundamentally disagree, obviously. Right. For one, before moving to its hawking point, just listen to what I'm saying. From a conservative standpoint, from a right-leaning standpoint, you're a man, you have a family, you go to work every day, you're working your ass off, you're doing this kind of thing. Okay. You're providing for your family, you're providing for your children, you're doing all these things that you're supposed to do, and you're a Christian. And most people in this country are still Christians. And you turn on the TV, and there is, Gonzo from the Muppets dressed up as a transgender Muppet. And you look at that and you think that that's literally an assault on the same value structure they just went and learned in church last Sunday was bad. Would that not enrage you or make you angry or upset if it was contrary to your own value structure.
So I would just say just as easily someone who's like maybe
It's
like
not an argument. I'm not looking for an argument. I'm just looking for you to be empathetic and listen to what they're
I'm
actually
trying to
feeling.
respond to it. And the thing is I'm not at all just going back to talking points. I'm listening to what you're saying and I feel that I'm adequately responding. Yeah, maybe they would be offended, but I don't care. I don't give a fuck. I would say fuck them, get over it, stop having your feelings hurt and being a little baby and change the channel. Like, here's the
And that's
truth.
why we have polarization.
No, but the truth of the matter is that you could just as easily have like a Buddhist who highly values peace. Do you think when they turn on the TV and they see a movie showing war that maybe they're going to be like really repulsed? That's literally an
Sure.
assault on their religious
But
values. That doesn't mean it should be
the mass
restricted though.
representation of Buddhism in the United States is very low. The mass representation of Christians is very high.
It doesn't matter. Again, we're like, do you mean like the TV shouldn't be allowed to
Now,
broadcast
what
certain
I'm saying
things,
is
or
that as a collective, if you make a large portion of your demographic collectively very upset because you're doing things that are contrary to their value structure, you're going to end up with mass polarization. And the reason nationalists are so upset, they're so enraged, they become ethno-nats and wig-nats and this kind of bullshit is
Mhm.
because they feel like their tribal identity is being canceled.
Right. So
Okay?
I'm not worried about restricting other people's rights because like some like incels are gonna feel sad. Like
But it
again, we're
makes them
kind of
extreme, Hunter.
no, but this is the thing is
It
any
makes
time
them
no,
extremists.
no, Andrew, anytime like progress is built, there's also a swell of reactionary backlash. This is how history
That's
plays out.
communist
But
bullshit, and it's not
no, it's not
historically
at all. This
accurate.
is look
That's
at
not
again, I
historically
keep going
accurate.
back to the slavery thing because it's so fits well here because it was unpopular largely in some areas of the country to free the slaves. They relied on that. Their religion even taught them that it I mean the Bible literally says slaves obey your masters, right? Like they were making the same arguments here. We don't restrict other people's rights based on like whether or not the country agrees with it. That's just not how this works. This is why we don't have a pure democracy. We also have laws and legislature and a fundamental guiding principle of equality and equal rights for
But
all across the board.
I'm not arguing any of that. I'm trying to explain to you a fundamental concept that's far more important than all of that. The fundamental
That
concept that
people
I'm
are
trying to
offended? I don't what's the
no, not that they're offended, but that if you take the representative interest of your very democracy and
Mhm.
you fundamentally oppose the value structure of the people that you're ruling, you're going to end up with polarization in such a mass that we can not only will progress as you would consider it be halted, but you'll never move the conversation forward. You'll never get any of these things achieved that you actually want to get achieved.
I mean, I
You
guess we
can't
did
do
have a
it.
I guess we did have a civil war, so sure, like but again, this would kind of go
Well, we
back to
had two civil wars.
this would go back to my like thing earlier is like this seems like you have like the really low opinion of Christians or like you think that like because we're like extending equality to people and have made progress and by the way in a lot of religious circles Christians are also although not white evangelical fundamentalists churches in general are thankfully becoming more accepting as well. This is starting to be a recognized thing.
Protestant churches have begun to become more accepting of LGBTQ. There's no doubt that that's true.
Mm-hmm.
However, this has in turn massively increased the move over to orthodoxy inside of the Christian religion.
I
The
just
reason for
feel
this, the reason for this is because when people feel like their value structures are under assault, they move towards whatever institutions they feel more represent their value structures. This is why we're in this massive polarized mess.
so
Look,
are you in favor of addressing systemic racism?
I've done hundreds and hundreds of debates that I've either moderated or participated in or this kind of thing. I've heard the argumentation from all sides. I'm talking about something far deeper than just, but this is what the Constitution says. There's something that's far deeper than this going on. What I'm talking about is the fact that we're engaging in mass polarization right now in a way that people don't really conceptualize. And what's going to end up happening as a byproduct of that is the division will not become reconcilable.
But we're not. The people that would actually be so mad about gay people having their rights to
It's
the
not
point that
just
they would
gay
like
people.
To the people that would be so mad about that, they are actually in the minority. If you look at it in the country, like generally the acceptance of gay people continues to be statistically on the rise. I know sometimes it takes some dips here and there, whatever, but generally speaking, especially over the past 20 years, it's made significant upticks. So again, this is just, you're making it sound like rights are a zero-sum game, and the people that would get angry about that act like that also. No, and that's the problem, is this is an invisible dichotomy. Gay people existing and having families and benefiting society and benefiting children that are orphans doesn't hurt Christians that want to live their lives and have a good old-fashioned traditional family where the man goes to work and mom is at home cooking and homeschooling the kids, and they ride the tractor to church every Sunday, and they live happily ever after. More power to them. If that's where they're happy, if that's what they want to do, go for it. No right is infringing on another person's right. So again, you don't get to, and I feel as if this is my best response to your fundamental thing you keep talking about, though. You do not get to restrict other people's rights. You don't get to trample on the law because other people are offended. And I understand that you're saying this is going to lead to polarization. There's already...
No, I'm not saying it's going to.
So, again,
I'm saying it already has.
It hasn't led to that. Like, it hasn't led to the amount of polarization that you're trying to make it sound like everyone's going to go into some like ISIS terrorist mode here.
So let's evaluate which one of us is correct. Tell me what the polls said about how many people think that there will be a civil war in 5 years ago versus how many people say it now.
I don't know how. I don't care how many people think it. Like, there's a lot of stuff that says like a civil war starting.
It's been trending like this, Hunter.
Well, I know more people
do you know why
talk
it's been
about
trending?
it, but this doesn't.
Why has it been trending like that?
Because gay people have rights?
No, it's not because of gay people having rights. It has to do with the fact that you have mass polarization where one side doesn't want to hear what the other side's saying. So for instance,
we
could give
you could give
gay people all the same rights that are enjoyed by married couples without
you just can't call it marriage.
Why would that be problematic? Who are you hurting?
Wait, I don't know if it's just calling it marriage. I'm pretty sure there's tax exemptions there too. One example that people, I'm pretty sure one example people talked about was that they were
just give them all of it and just not call it marriage. Why would that be problematic?
Because then I would go back to why in the world are the white evangelical Christians trying to make their
Doesn't
special?
matter. Who are you hurting?
Wait. Why do they need their own special snowflake definition?
Who are you hurting? Who is it hurting?
Who is it hurting to call gay people married?
Well, it doesn't matter. I just told you who it hurts. I just told you it hurts 200 million Christians.
And it hurts gay people to not call it their marriage. It hurts gay people.
It's an assault on the fundamentals of their religion.
I don't care.
What does it cost? What does it cost homosexuals to have a civil union with the same rights as a married couple?
I have a different question for you. If someone
you're not engaging with what I'm saying, so answer mine first, please.
Say it again.
What does it hurt homosexuals to have a civil union versus it being called a marriage if they get the same rights and privileges as everybody else?
I don't know. I guess if you like hypothetically just want to call it the same thing, I would just have to ask it flipping it on its head is how does it hurt to do it the other way around? How does it hurt?
I just told you, because you have 200 million people who fundamentally felt their religious institution is under assault.
Okay, got
whereas it costs
perfect.
the LGBTQ nothing.
Got you. So here would be my response then. In response to that, you have a large group of people, doesn't really matter how much of a population they make, who are legitimately, legally been proven to having their rights stripped and stomped on because a bunch of dumb fuck hickety hee haw Christian conservatives are somehow really angry and mad that gay people have the rights to get married. That's what I would say to them. I would tell them to fuck right off. Hold on, wait.
Aren't viable solutions.
No. You're not viable solution. You're saying that we should restrict certain rights in favor of people's feelings. You are literally making this.
There's no right to marriage. What right has been restricted? If it's a state institution, if the government is involved, then it has to abide by certain standards. We know this. And if it's as far as giving out licenses, then yes, non-discrimination clauses apply there. We know this. Absolutely. So it's hurting gay people across the board. No, because I want to address this really, really quickly here, because you're saying that the reason what hurts it by just calling it marriage is that it would
make them feel like it would make the Christians feel like their religion is being trampled on. And I'm saying the response to that is the reason that you shouldn't do it is that it would make all the gay people feel like their constitutional and legal rights are being trampled on, which also by definition would be true.
What constitutional right do they have to get married?
They don't have a constitutional right to get married.
Okay,
but again, no, that's not a good faith question, and you know that. So they don't have.
It is good faith.
No, they don't have a constitutional right to get married, but they have certain fundamental rights, and there are certain non-discrimination.
What rights?
There are certain non-discrimination rights.
Right. There's non-discrimination.
And the government, considering the state is involved and it's government involved, and they're issuing licenses, they have to abide by certain legal standards that apply to non-discrimination. I don't know which exact amendment says you can't discriminate on the basis of sex, race, and this, that, and the other thing. I don't know which one it is, but it's a legal right. Like, by definition, their legal rights are being trampled on by Christians' feelings.
What legal rights?
They have a right to not be discriminated against.
Do they have a right to get married, though?
Yes.
What right do they have to get married?
So let me explain. If you are a gay couple and you walk in to a government institution that is going to give you a marriage license,
I see.
It's a discriminatory practice to say, no, you're gay, so we're not going to give you this marriage license.
Got it. So the right fundamentally doesn't exist, except to say that if the government's going to do this, they can't discriminate against you while they're doing this practice. Got it. That makes a lot of sense. So again, if you were to offer it as a civil union, as this is just a government thing, has nothing to do with religion, why not just call it civil unions instead of marriage? And then the polarization for this issue goes away.
So do you think that's all this polarization is just over calling it marriage? Don't you think they'd be mad? Wait, if you're giving them all in your hypothetical, if you're giving them all the same rights, that would obviously lead to the same amount of polarization, right? That's just the big, because is that not just as big of a quote unquote assault on their religion?
No, it's not.
They're being incentivized to be gay.
You don't have to participate at that point. You understand?
No, I don't.
So the participant, what happens is it's a participation. Okay, this is our fundamental problem. So if you were to say marriage is between one man and one woman because the Bible says it's between one man and one woman, this is a fundamental belief structure that we have. Mm-hmm. The government says, well, now marriage can be between two men. Mm-hmm. Okay, you're assaulting the fundamental belief structure of these people, and now they have to participate in it.
How do they need to participate in it, please?
Because their marriage license to them is a religious license far more than it is a government license.
Well, then that's on them. They're going to have to get over that. Like, they can go in, they have their own ceremony, they can do the man and the woman thing, and then if gay people want to go in and have their own ceremony and get the license and whatever, then they can do that too. Again, you're making it sound like rights are somehow this zero-sum game when they're just fucking not. Like, gay people can get married.
I didn't say rights.
I'm not saying, I didn't say that you said that, but you're making it out to sound like that. No one else's rights are being restricted in order for gay people to get married. In your system, gay people are restricted from getting married because it leads to polarization, but you're saying the polarization's only from the simple semantic change of merely calling it marriage because they view it as religious. This is delusional thinking. That's what I would say. So I would ask you
to give you a wider prism.
I feel I've had a very wide understanding here. I have another question though, which is, what if someone says that it is my religious belief that black people are subhuman? So is it bad then to give black people rights? What if why? What if they say, what if there's a town where they say, you know what, I want to yeah, can you elaborate actually? Why?
Yeah, what's an innate characteristic or an innate characteristic?
Sex.
What's an innate characteristic?
Sexuality.
Okay, that would sexuality is an innate characteristic?
Partially, yes. We just went over this.
So you're born gay then?
I mean, not what do you mean?
Well, then it's not innate.
Hold on. That's not true at all. There's a genetic component to it. So yes, it is innate. And also there are other things that are not innate that you can't discriminate on against either. For example, veteran status.
So demonstrate that.
Hold on. Veteran status. You can't
demonstrate homosexuality is innate.
We already went over how about
No,
25%.
demonstrate it.
Okay, I'm demonstrating it right now. We
Okay.
already went over how about 25% of it goes back to genetics. So there is absolutely a partial innate genetic characteristic there. But again, it's not just about discriminating against like innate characteristics, because again, I would point you to the veterans. We aren't allowed to discriminate against people for the veteran status. You're not allowed to discriminate against people for being divorced. You're not allowed to.
I'm trying to walk you right to the goal so that you understand it. An innate characteristic like skin color is not changeable. Who you sleep with is completely and totally up to you.
No, your
Should
sexuality
you ever discriminate against people based on an innate
So let's change the
characteristics that are
hypothetical then.
unchangeable? No.
Well, then
No,
what
you
if my
shouldn't.
religion is literally? What if my religion is that veterans aren't allowed in my house, or veterans aren't allowed? I don't like veterans. Fuck veterans.
Then why would you have to have veterans in your house then?
Well, just generally speaking, if my religion was I don't like veterans, does that mean I should have the right to discriminate against veterans?
Inside your own home?
Well, no. Like if you have an establishment, like if, generally speaking, hypothetically, like how does that play out? Because you're saying, well, Christians are, they don't like gay people. So that's reason enough, pretty much, is what you're telling me. So what I'm saying to you is, what if someone else just flips it on its head and says, well, I have a religion that says this thing is bad. I have a religion that says veterans are bad. So therefore, I should be allowed to say no veterans are allowed inside my restaurant.
Well, not inside your restaurant, but inside your church, that would probably be okay.
I don't think you could discriminate against veteran status, even in a church.
Well, I don't know. I'd have to look.
But no. But hypothetically, I'm not asking you a realistic question. Now I'm asking you a hypothetical.
Mm-hmm.
Would that be justified then in your world?
I mean, I wouldn't like it.
But okay, no. That's a backpedaling way. I know that you wouldn't like it.
What's the question specifically, so I can answer it specifically?
Hypothetically speaking, would that be okay? Like morally justified? If it's morally justified to hypothetically restrict gay people from getting married in this instance, would it also hypothetically?
Well, you're not restricting them from getting married.
Would it also hypothetically be okay to, on the basis of religion, discriminate against veterans?
No, it wouldn't be okay to discriminate against veterans. You're not discriminating against homosexuals by saying that they can't use your religious institution for marriage.
But it's not a religious institution. That right there is just
that's the problem. This is where the disconnect is. You understand now? This is the disconnect. The disconnect is one side considers it a religious institution, the other one does not.
So one side's delusional and views a secular
well, that's
institution.
Your viewpoint.
No.
You think 200 million people are delusional?
If that's what they believe, then yes, fuck them. They're delusional as shit. Yes, America is by foundation, by principle, a secular country. They can just view this institution as being a religious institution if they want to, but that doesn't make it such. What the fuck? This sounds like it would contradict a lot of like the arguments that right-wing people try to make about trans people. But what do you like? Yes, that would absolutely be ridiculous. That would be delusional.
What would be? What would be delusional?
Hold on. Rosie, what are you doing down here, love? Where's Mom? Mommy's asleep? All right, you need to go get in your bed, okay? And you need to go to sleep now. I see you right now, and I love you. So, I'm sorry.
You got to take care of your family first.
No. It's okay. I'm going to have to wrap up this conversation in a second because I have other topics I need to talk to anyway. But please, just repeat your question one more time. I know I've had to ask you that a couple times. I apologize.
Well, you asked me, you told me it was totally delusional that 200 million people would think that their religious institution.
Right. So if I just, no, that's not what I said. I said, if you think that the institution of like marriage, like giving marriage licenses out is somehow an attack on your religious freedom, like, then yes, if you view that as a religious institution, even though it's not, then I would say that that's ridiculous. And also, it would be very inconsistent because technically speaking, from a biblical perspective, actually, what the Bible says is marriage is one man, one woman, and God. So technically, by the biblical perspective, atheists wouldn't be allowed to get married either.
Tell me
But
where
I
it
don't
says
see.
that.
Go look it up. I don't see any problem with. I don't see conservatives having a big problem with that. It's just not at all like. Yes, if you just like, this would be like if I was like, well, I view the White House as being. I I view the White House as being a religious institution. Like that doesn't mean anything.
Well, listen, viewing rights doesn't mean anything except that you view them as rights. So all of this is a construction of the mind, whether you want to believe it or not. This portion of the construction of the mind for religion is that fundamentally, this is what people believe, whether you disagree with them believing it or not. My interest is in unity. My interest is in a strong nation. My interest is not in having the nation brought to its knees because they cannot agree on very simplistic fundamental questions that represent a large portion of their population.
I just completely disagree with the idea that anyone's rights end where someone else's feelings begin. I think that that's really a dangerous precedent to set. But either way, this convo ended up going a completely different direction than I expected.
Yeah, I think it did.
But either way,
I was
hey,
going
man.
to say this. I was going to say this, and I'll just make this as public as I can. I do not believe. I had made a previous accusation. I thought Hunter Avallone was a grifter. I did, and
That's
I even
true.
called in and yelled at him a little bit about it.
That's
But
right.
having
Good
had him
times.
come on and do a few debates and having talked to him on the back end, I do believe that he's sincere.
Thank you,
And
man.
I do retract my accusation of griftiness. And I apologize for having said that. It was out of turn.
It's all right, man. I appreciate that. And also, I want to ask you, because I know your name is Big Papa Fascist. Do you identify yourself actually as a fascist, or what do you?
No.
So, what do you consider
And it's
yourself?
not my name. My name is Andrew Wilson.
So you're done with Big Papa Fascist?
It was used as a blood sport nomenclature for politically provoked because the left wing was consistently calling me a fascist, and I went, fuck it. Right? Fuck it. So we'll just do that. But it's always been a troll.
Okay.
And it was always known to be a troll. If you go back and watch my Vosh debate, I told him straight up right from the beginning it was me just basically being a trollish asshole. But BPF has stuck, and that's fine. I'm just fine with it. I think that it's amazing irony in many ways.
All right, I got you.